So Ted Cruz has been brazenly violating election law his entire campaign, and it actually took Trump's campaign bringing it up for it even to get any coverage. So over at Dan Abrams' Law News, they describe how Cruz has been attending events that are coordinated by his super PAC, and the super PAC has gone on to record the events and then post ads using that footage. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are a few remaining election laws left in the United States, but one of those laws indeed is that you cannot coordinate with your super PAC. The campaign for a candidate cannot coordinate with the super PAC because the super PAC is technically an outside spending group, and they're supposed to have no affiliation, and then the super PAC can raise unlimited funds and spend unlimited funds on the election, but the campaign has some laws that remain. But he's violating election law here on multiple fronts. Again, there's supposed to be no coordination between the two, and they're creating events, and then they have Ted Cruz come and speak at the events. Now, that's obvious coordination, but they use a loophole to get around that simply by saying, oh, no, we didn't coordinate it with him. We set it up on our own, and then we invited him after the fact, and he's our special guest. So, no, the event isn't necessarily about him. We set up the event first, and then we invited him, and now he's our special guest. But then the area where there arguably is no loophole at all is when they record it, they have the exclusive rights to that footage that they recorded from the event, and then they make ads out of it. You're not allowed to do that. So another thing, that we've seen, which is similar to this, is you had Mitch McConnell, you had other Republican politicians, and other Democratic politicians. They would post video online with no audio track with it, and it would just be, some goofy shit. In Mitch McConnell's case, it was him smiling and turning to the camera. The Daily Show made a mockery of this at the time, and the super PAC would then take that footage, which they just happened to upload to the internet without audio, and then they would add audio to it, and then they would say there was no coordination. The campaign or Mitch McConnell himself, hey, they just uploaded their own footage with no audio, and then later on the super PAC would add the audio. Coordination? What do you mean? There's no coordination here. So the whole point of this story is to show you guys that the few remaining laws that we have when it comes to elections, they're a joke. Like, they're making a mockery of the few remaining laws that we have. And I'm not kidding when I say the conservative justices on the Supreme Court are so immensely stupid that they didn't see this coming. In fact, I want to go ahead and give you a quote from one of the justices here. This is unbelievable. Quote, "We now conclude that independent expenditures, including those made by corporations, do not give rise to corruption or the appearance of corruption." Now, that was in Citizens United. Think about how moronic that is. So, outside spending groups, whether it's super PACs, which is the whole point of a super PAC, or they say just corporations. So if the corporation is spending a tremendous amount of money to get a certain politician elected, not only is that not corruption, already wrong, it's definitely corruption, they say that's not even the appearance of corruption. So if you happen to have the opinion that that's corruption, they go, you're crazy. Why are you making links where there are no links? Obviously, you have the corporations and the super PAC spending money to elect these candidates because they just happen to agree with their position on social issues. They're not trying to get favoritism and loopholes in later that help their companies, and they're not trying to get subsidies, for example. No, that's got nothing to do with that. Our entire system and the few remaining election laws that we have are predicated on a lie or are predicated on a completely inaccurate and ridiculous understanding of human nature and the way a system works with incentives. So, and now we see the fruits of this, because you have Ted Cruz, who's already a slimy, sleazy, classic politician, and he's like, oh, well, there seems to be no punishment anyway for violating election law, so even when there are election laws, like, hey, the super PAC needs to be separate from the campaign and from me, how about no? How about they'll host events, I'll show up, they'll record it, they'll have the exclusive rights to that footage, and then they'll put it online and make ads out of it. You're not allowed to do that! And this should totally demolish in everybody's mind this ridiculous idea that indeed there is a separation between super PAC and campaign. There's not. There's absolutely coordination between super PACs and campaigns. And the idea that the spending has no influence on the candidates, you would have to be incredibly ignorant or naive or really just stupid in order to believe that. Because you can see it in the legislation. It's not just my opinion. It's not just conjecture. Look at the things that they propose. It's not a coincidence that ExxonMobil spends a tremendous amount of money every year in lobbying, specifically for Republicans, but even for some Democrats. And then lo and behold, they happen to get a $4 billion subsidy, corporate welfare check every year under the guise of they need it for research and development. Right. One of the most profitable corporations on the planet needs incentive to continue to be one of the most profitable corporations on the planet. No, the incentive is the money they make anyway. You giving corporate welfare to them is just that. It's welfare when they don't even need it. So don't be naive. Don't be dumb. It's unbelievable the Supreme Court ruled this way in Citizens United. It's unbelievable they ruled that way in McCutcheon. It's unbelievable they ruled that way going back to the cases in the 1980s, which really started this trend of getting the virus and the cancer of money in politics. And terrible, terrible people like Ted Cruz and all the other politicians, they're going to take advantage of this system. Because I got news for you, guys like that would have no chance of winning if it wasn't for the fact that corporate money props them up.